Every woman needs to listen to this episode. I invited Rebecca Akat, who is a menstrual, cycle, and feminine embodiment coach, onto the podcast because we need to start having these conversations as women and also as men around our menstrual cycle, how it impacts our lives, our businesses, relationships, everything. So, if you're someone who wants to understand their cycle and themselves and be able to really start to embrace and sync themselves up to the different phases that we go through every month, this episode is for you. We are going to dive into Rebecca's journey of how she got to the place from being a high achieving business owner earning six figures to teaching women about their cycle, what it actually means to live and sync up to our cycle, and how to see it as a portal into deeper intimacy with yourself if you are on a self-love journey or with your partners in your relationships. We also talk about how to invite our men into our menstrual experience and how it can be deeply connecting. Maybe why you want to feel like you want to break up with them every month. Rebecca talks us through what's happening in a woman's body and the hormones during each phase. We also talk about that increased anxiety you might feel as you're going through your PMS and period, and also the shame that we may still feel around our menstruation and the ancient spiritual practices that are still going on around the world that are driven by this shame. This is such a juicy, jam-packed episode. You're not going to want to miss this one. So without further ado, let's welcome Rebecca onto the podcast. Welcome to the Relationship Rehab Podcast. I'm Sammy, a certified breakup and relationship coach, attachment specialist, former love addict, and spiritual junkie. This podcast is for you, the hopeless romantic who loves to love, and a safe space for us to explore and heal our attachment trauma, broken hearts, and love addictions. Together, we are on a mission to become the love of our own lives, so we can have successful, healthy, secure relationships with others. So if you're ready to create a life and love beyond your wildest desires, you're in the right place. Your journey towards becoming more secure in love and life starts now. Hello and welcome back to the Relationship Rehab Podcast. And today I am joined by the beautiful Rebecca, and I'm so excited to invite her on to this podcast because she is a menstrual cycle coach and all about the feminine embodiment. So I've been following her stuff on Instagram for a while, and she is absolutely phenomenal at talking to us women about really taking our menstrual cycle seriously and how we can sync that up to our lives, our work, but also our relationships as well. So I'm super excited to dive into all the personal anecdotes and all the questions. But without further ado, I'd love to welcome Rebecca onto the podcast and would love for you to tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. For those of you who don't know me, I am Rebecca. I'm the creator and founder of Blume Womb. I'm a menstrual cycle coach. I help women come into their bodies and really experience their life and their really coming into alignment with like their feminine through their cyclical nature, which a lot of us have just really been divorced from in many ways. And with that, I dive into feminine embodiment practices. I dive into really connecting with your womb, all the juicy things that come with being a woman and coming into your power.
Yes. And we were just talking before we pressed the record button of how we used to be, or I feel like I'm still kind of in this place, but you were saying about that's where you used to be. And this is why I would love to know about your journey of how
Mm.
you came into this type of work. Like, why is it important? Because what I observe in myself and also the women that I work with and interact with on a daily basis in my world is that we are very ambitious. We're like type A girlies. We go after what we want and we're hustling, and we got businesses and careers and friendships and fitness and all the things are going on,
Yeah.
and we are driven, which is such a beautiful thing. But what I noticed in my journey was that I would quickly burn out. I would
Hmm.
quickly feel that I wasn't doing enough, I wasn't good enough, And then all this stuff would come up, and I would almost like be a complete heap on the floor. And then that
Mm.
would spill into the relationships I had as well. So, yeah, tell us about your journey of how you came from that space to where you're at now.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm like, where do I start? There's so many like layers to this. But I yeah, so a few years ago, before I started Blume Womb, or even knew anything about cycle tracking or how to live in tune with my cycle, with my body, I was very much in this like, I guess you call it like the girl boss era, where it was just hustling and grinding. And I scaled a business to 6 figures. It was a network marketing business, which was just very heavy in sales and hitting ranks and making X amount of money every single month. And it was, yeah, it was just very masculine in many ways, very much like you have to hit certain quotas in order for you to see success in that business, right? And while it really served me well in many ways, it also completely burnt me out because I was just very much in this the need to just be productive all the time, right? That productivity anxiety, where if you're not productive, you feel like you're not worthy or that you're going to fall behind, whatever it may be. You're in that like fight or flight survival mode. Like that was very much me. And I will say, like, that's still because you were saying that I used to be that still comes out for me. It's a pattern where I think we're all learning to unravel these patterns and come back into this newfound way of like really pacing ourselves and slowing down and moving with our bodies and feeling in alignment with what our needs are and all of that. Yeah, it's a never ending journey in that, I'd say. But for myself, I did that for about 4 years, and I was like, I am so burnt out. I can't like keep doing like I can't keep working the way that I've been working. And so I decided to take a huge step away from work, and I decided to stop all these businesses that I've built. Um, and in that year, so I took a whole year away from work or trying to build anything. And my intention was to like start something new again, but like nothing was coming through for me. Um, and I like started one thing and it just wasn't working out, and nothing was like in full alignment. And so I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna sit in this uncertainty and see what comes and just be in this like space. And I really needed that because it taught me how to rest and how to just not feel like I have to be productive 24/7, but just like be and not always do. And it was so hard for me. It was so hard for me to like really be in that full trust mode, also just be present with what was like happening within my external world and my internal world. I was also just moving through some like health things because I was kind of burned out. And yeah, and so in that year I discovered cycle tracking and I just started that practice for myself. I learned about the 4 phases of the cycle and how you can only get pregnant 5 days a week, which no, or sorry, 5 days a month, which no one taught us about back in sex ed, which was mind boggling to me. And so I started just learning about the menstrual cycle, about womb healing, and really coming into your body as a woman and being in a healthy relationship with your feminine, which so many women haven't learned to do because we do get brought up in a way where we're very, very disconnected to those parts of ourselves, or it doesn't feel safe to be that too because we're taught that that's wrong, or there's just a huge disconnect to our bodies in many ways too, right? And so coming back into that was like, and doing that through living with my cycle was like that missing piece that I feel like I've been searching for my whole entire life. And it literally brought me so back into alignment with myself. I started just learning so much more about it. And then that's how Blume Womb got created, because all I did was I started sharing from a place of like, I need to tell more women. And then that's how a whole brand and business grew from it. Because it was really just this like, yeah, this mission that kind of found me. And then here we are a few years later.
Wow, that sounds like quite the journey.
Yeah,
I
it
think
was for
so
sure.
many of us can resonate where we are just in this masculine world where we're hustling. And you made a very good point when you said it just doesn't feel safe to rest. Oh,
Mm,
that hit me in the feels because I still feel this now and again. And I'm living in this gorgeous, beautiful woodland house right now in the north of Thailand, and I'm living with three other women.
Mm,
And it's so interesting that I'm being surrounded by more feminine women, because I would say I'm operating mostly in my masculine. Oh, I used to. I'm far better now, but I still see it. And they are so in their feminine, and it's so beautiful to be around them. But
mm,
like you said, sometimes we just don't feel safe being in that space. And
yeah,
then what I'm hearing is like being able to come back to your body, your menstrual cycle and cycle tracking really enabled you to step into your feminine energy and be able to really start to connect with your body. And
yeah,
something that you posted on Instagram just the other day really
yeah.
hit me in my feels. And I just want to read it out for everybody because it resonated so much. And it speaks to what you're talking about right now. And you said the reason you should be taking your monthly cycle into consideration and prioritize living with its rhythm, because it will save you from the belief that there's something wrong with you, that there is always more to do, that your bleed is an inconvenience, and that being a woman is hard. The moment you start tracking your cycle, you will feel a weight lifted from your shoulders, you will breathe deeper, and the resistance you felt towards life will be released because you finally met yourself in the innate state of who you really are. Oh, oh my God. I was like, oh, this is just so good. But that word, inconvenience, such an
Mm,
inconvenience. So how can we how can we get to that place? How can us women really work with our cycles to be able to no longer see our bleed as an inconvenience to our already busy lives, and really come
mhm,
back to that space of seeing it, like you put it, a spiritual practice, an opportunity to slow down and to rest? But what if it just doesn't feel safe? How can we really
mm.
cultivate that environment for ourselves?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I also think a lot of women experience heavy bleeds or painful bleeds. And of course, then you're like, this feels like an inconvenience. It feels like my body is also not on my side, but it's giving me pain. So how am I supposed to see this as a blessing kind of thing? And it's so interesting when I work with women, I'm like, yeah, but your bleed is doing that because it needs you to pay attention to it and it needs you to consider and honor it, right? And that's why it's becoming an quote unquote inconvenience because it needs your attention, it needs your love and support. And so when we're coming into our cycle and we're starting to tune in with that more, your bleed will also it'll become a reflection of your life. So the way that I always see your cycle, it's all these hormones doing different things throughout the month. And also it's just a reflection of your life. The way that you approach your life will show up in your cycle. And so when we learn to slow down, when we learn to come into our bodies, when we learn to be present with what's in our bodies, we can really come into this state of feeling safety in that too. At first, it might feel a little uncomfortable because you might not have ever done that before. But the more you do it, you build that foundational relationship to your body where you're like, I'm on your side and you're on my side. The more you can feel it be this beautiful connection that really creates this union where you work together, and your cycle becomes this container that holds you in your flow as a woman. And so, yeah, coming back to our bleed being an inconvenience, or like, how can we honor it even though we have our busy lives and we still have to work? And I get that not every woman has the privilege to maybe take a few days off during your bleed, right? And what I always like to say to that is really try to honor your cycle as much as possible in every single phase that you're moving through. So let's say you're in your menstrual phase, you're bleeding, and maybe you still have to go to work or you have kids to take care of. That's obviously do what you got to do. And in what ways can you honor yourself and slow down? Maybe you take you take time off your phone during those days you're bleeding so you're not like mentally completely overwhelmed too, right? Maybe you really just say no to any social activities or social events during that time. Like whatever you can do to just honor yourself as much as possible and give yourself rest, because your menstrual phase is literally an inbuilt time for rest. This is your time for you to take it slow. And the more that we allow that, the easier the rest of our cycle will be too, especially like coming into our late luteal, which is when we experience those PMS symptoms or any other uncomfortable symptoms or cycle signs. Um, that's it will really, it starts with the way that you show up in your bleed and how you honor yourself in that. Um, so yeah, it really becomes this container that holds you. And I also always like to say that your cycle isn't this like strict list of do's and don'ts, or like these strict guidelines of like things you're allowed to do, you're not allowed to do. It's quite the opposite. It's literally your path to freedom, because it it's what it's asking of you is bringing you into um, seeing what your body needs at every point in your cycle, every phase, every day in your cycle, and honoring that. And that can look different at every point in your cycle, and every cycle can look different too. It's its own journey every single time. And when you start seeing that as like its own journey, and what does it have to teach me this time around? How am I showing up in my ovulation? How am I showing up in my luteal phase? What is my bleed like? Is it heavier? Is it more painful? How did I not honor myself? It is if it is really, really painful or heavier. Is there something that I can do differently next time around? It's its own journey every single time. So that's really how it becomes this like spiritual practice and this ritual, because you start tuning into it and you start seeing how it becomes a reflection of your life. And there's you could dive into, but yeah, I'll leave it at that for right now.
Mm. Yeah, and I remember when I started to pay attention to my menstrual cycle and the changes in my body and the changes in my mood and my emotions and everything, because we
Mm,
were not taught in school how to be present with our menstrual cycle. We were not taught
yeah.
anything. Let's be honest. I didn't know what the phases were called. I didn't know. We just had such little education around this. So I feel like as grown women now, we are educating ourselves on the basics, on the foundations of our reproductive system, which is,
Yeah.
like you said, crazy. And as I was doing this, I noticed that it actually, for me, and for a lot of our listeners who identify with the more anxiously attached style, is that it was a self-love journey.
Mm,
Because when we are more in our anxious attachment, there's somewhat of a lack of attunement to ourselves. We're more attuned to the external world around us and to others. So we will almost self-sacrifice ourselves and our needs and our desires. So monitoring my menstrual cycle, coming back to that connection with myself and my body, was such a beautiful opportunity for me to lean into self-love, for me
mm,
to practice and choose to, okay, let me know what it feels like to be more tuned with myself. And
yeah.
when we are on our attachment healing journey, when we're learning how to set healthier boundaries, better communication, more self-connection to manage our emotions, our menstrual cycle can really be a beautiful portal into that, because it invites us to be attuned to our body, right?
Mm. I really love that you brought this up, because I was just reflecting on my own journey and my own journey with because I have struggled with the anxious attachment style so much. Like we love her. And she teaches you so much about yourself. Um, and my so the my journey with Blume Womb and just like cycle tracking and cyclical living and like coming into your body and honoring the feminine within you and all of that, like it has been my greatest accountability partner when it comes to how I have been showing up in my romantic relationships. And I am a single girly. I've been like in the dating pool for the last few years. And I've learned so much about myself. And I've also really struggled in many ways, because you're just being faced with things that are really uncomfortable, especially if you're an anxious attachment style, right? There's always these things that trigger certain wounds in you where you're not feeling worthy, or you feel like, yeah, you're too much, or yeah, it takes you so out of your body, like you were saying earlier, and your focus is so on the external world or on that person that you're wanting love and validation from, when really what really we're needing, craving is love and validation from internal, right? And when it comes to like my journey with that, like menstrual cycle tracking and just like it's not just about tracking your cycle. It's so much more than that. Like, there's so many layers to this whole practice and this whole cyclical living, because it's all about coming into tune with your power as a woman and what works for you, what doesn't, and having healthy boundaries in that too. And when you come in tune with like your own cyclical rhythm, you just start feeling this power that you have as a woman. You're like, I'm going to set healthy boundaries to protect that power too and protect my peace in that. And that has been like the greatest accountability for me is my menstrual cycle in the way that I show up in my relationship. And I'm currently in this season of life where I was like, this started probably about like 5 or 6 months ago. I ended something with someone, and I really just decided to take a step back from dating for a while because I just felt so sensitive to anything that just wasn't fulfilling me and taking care of my peace and my like my what I really wanted to do in my with my life, and anything that wasn't adding to that, like I was just like, no, I just have no space for that right now. And so I don't even want to say I've been on a celibate journey because that wasn't my intention with it, but that's kind of what it feels like a little bit. And I obviously I'm not going to be like, I'm not trying to be strict with this journey of like, if a good connection comes along, I'm all for it. And also I'm no, like, I just don't want to seek it or chase it right now. I guess the reason why I'm bringing this up is just like, this work has just put me so in my body, and it really has helped me feel what feels good for myself. And even like having sexual encounters with men, I I just can't with anyone that isn't fully giving me what I need. Like it just isn't in alignment if it's not a full body yes. And it's because I'm so connected to my womb. And she just tells me, she's like, this man is not for you. This energy is not doing you well. And for the first time in my life, I have never, ever in my life gotten yeast infections. But the first time in my life, I've gotten yeast infections this last year with this guy that I was seeing. That this was the last guy that I just ended things with. And I ended it because my body was literally like, you cannot keep doing this. We're rejecting him like over and over again. I was like, this is wild. Because mentally I was like, it's all good. Anyway, so moral of the story, the more that you come into connection with yourself and doing that through your cyclical nature as a woman and coming into your womb, like she is going to scream so loud and proud about what it is that works for you, what doesn't, who's good for you, who isn't. And it is really has been like my guiding point of like what works for me in relationships and what I actually desire. And she makes the decisions for me now, like my womb does. My logical brain just is not part of the situation anymore. So yeah, I love that you brought that up because it's so part of it, you know.
It really is. And thank you for sharing about your story and connecting with the
Yeah,
womb, because that's another thing when we have this lack of attunement to ourselves, is that what I observe is there's such a lot of self-doubt. There's a lot of not listening to the intuition, because we're not connected to
yeah,
the body and spirit, like you said.
right.
She could be screaming loud and proud, like, no, 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 don't let him in. He's not
Mm-hmm,
right for
mm-hmm,
us. He's not good energy. But logically, we're living up here in our mind, and we're being driven by these beliefs that we just need a partner, that this person is going to give us all that we're craving, that
mm-hmm.
finally we're going to feel significant to somebody and have meaning and purpose and love and attention and all those things that we've been deprived of in our childhood, that we're desperately craving from another, when we're not realizing that's something that we can tap into within ourselves. And
Yeah,
that's what men tracking my menstrual cycle and just observing what's happening in my body has done for me, is realizing
yeah,
that I can give myself all the care, love and peace and attention and validation that I'm searching for outside of myself within. It's so interesting that your body was just screaming no, 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 but you followed it as well. I feel like a lot of us can hear it, It's not that we can't hear it. Well, some of us may be completely disconnected, but I remember hearing my intuition, having that gut feeling that this person wasn't right, but I
Yeah.
still carried on because
Mm.
my mind was in the driver's seat in control.
Yeah. It's hard to like when you're so not used to listening to your intuition because maybe in the past also because there's such a difference between like intuition and then like the fear or the ego that comes in, right? And deciphering the two can be hard sometimes if you're not familiar what it is. But I always go back to like for me, what intuition has felt like is my body responding to something and listening to that. Like gut feeling, it's called gut feeling for a reason because it's your body responding to that, right? Versus anything that's not that. It's in the head. It's a logical thing. Even fear, right? We sometimes we're like, is this fear or is this intuition? I can't tell. Is this a trauma response or is this intuition? And it for me, I can always feel it in my body or in my head. There's like such a difference where it stems from. And it takes practice to feel that, obviously. But intuition really becomes this like muscle that we have to train as women, as any person, obviously, even men have intuition, but especially for us women, I think we have been so divorced to our intuition in many ways, because it really does lie in our body and in our wombs, especially. And I mean, we've grown up in a culture and a society that has taught us everything to be at war with our bodies, whether it's the diet culture, through the beauty industry, the aging industry, even the menstrual cycle industry, or a lot of times, right? Like birth control, all of that. Like it's downplaying that we can't be in our bodies or that's not safe to be in our bodies. So I think that there's this huge shift in our generation as women, in our collective as women, of like coming back into full trust of what is happening in our body so we can trust our intuition again. Um, yeah, so I think that there's yeah, we're really shifting into that again. And it really becomes this like muscle that we're starting to train. And it takes time. It takes time to really trust that, you know?
How can we start to train that muscle for someone who is completely disconnected from their
Yeah.
intuition, overwhelmed with fear and self-doubt? What's like
Yeah.
more step towards that?
Um, I would say the main thing that I always go back to, and this is what I was touching on earlier, is like seeing how your body's responding to something in a situation and just stay like if you really um stay present with something, like let's say you're having a situation that just feels you're not really sure what to do about or you're kind of at crossroads with whatever it may be, take a moment, just feel how your body is responding to it. Like sit with it for just a second and see how your body feels. Is your energy expanding towards it or is it contracting? And I think the expansion always kind of indicates that this is for you. Take step further. The contraction, and that's where I think we also can feel difference between intuition and fear. Fear will feel like contraction. Intuition will feel like expansion. And so feel how your body responds to this. And this also goes into the whole practice of like muscle testing, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but I've worked with a lot of different functional medicine doctors over the past couple of years that will muscle test different foods for me, allergies that I may have, as well as supplements. And the reason why I bring this up is because our body knows. So I'm still learning how to muscle test for myself, but your body will literally weaken if something's not good for you and strengthen when something is for you. And so when you start feeling that in your body, and you start coming into that presence with it and really takes just some time to be with that versus like reacting on the trigger or the trauma or whatever it may be. I think that's really the key to strengthening that intuition and that connection to our bodies, first and foremost, for sure.
And being able to release the fear, because sometimes we can go into contraction because we're afraid. And
Yeah.
a lot of my
Yeah.
clients, when they start dating again, maybe after a really painful breakup or relationship, toxic relationship, and they want to start dating again, but there's so much in their fear. They're so contracted. Their heart is closed. And there's just a lot of fear around
Yeah.
allowing someone to come into their life and they think they're going to get hurt again. And we won't go into like what's right or wrong because there's no such thing. But again, we can come back to that self-love element
Yeah.
because we don't know what's going to happen
Yeah.
when you get back out those
Yeah.
days. You could fall back into another relationship that's going to hurt you, or you could fall into a relationship that's going to expand you to the in ways that you couldn't even imagine. We just
Totally.
don't know what's going to happen. All we
Yeah.
have control over, all we have discernment about is ourselves. So being so anchored and grounded in our body, like you said, really paying attention to those little nuances, those little nudges. Because this is the way that I differentiate fear and intuition. Fear is loud. Like you said,
Mm.
it's contracting, it's loud, it's like,
Yeah.
no, don't do it. Because
Yeah.
like we want to keep you safe and don't so when you're feeling this intense anxiety, if you're dating someone and they're not responding and they're going distant and you're just like, oh, this feels so terrible. I'm in such contraction right now to listen to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That when intuition, it's more soft, it's more nudges, doesn't want to
Yeah.
overwhelm it. It wants to give us the empowerment to keep following what we want to follow. And it's like guidance, it's like gentle
Hmm.
guidance. So really
Yeah.
is needing a lot of patience and space to be able to
Yeah.
strengthen that muscle. Like you said, when we're so externally focused in this world, we are disconnected from that. So being able to give
Yeah.
yourself a lot of space.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because it's really that the piece that comes from following your intuition. Once you start doing it, you're like, oh, duh, like this is it. Versus when you follow those, like if you like, especially in dating, if you're following those anxious attachment triggers and you're like, okay, but I need more of it. Like it becomes this little bit of a kind of like a drug response, right? Where you're like, you need more, like another hit. Like that's what it was for me, where I was like, I know this is not for me, but I need validation because that's all I know how to do. And then it really comes from this response of like anxiousness, and also just like you're scattered, you're not in your foundation, you're not grounded in your power at all, because everything you're doing is coming from this place of just needing love and to be seen. um yeah, and I something else I was going to mention with that is I really feel like intuition itself, it just coming back to like the menstrual cycle with it. I had a client call today and we're talking about, so I work a lot with the feminine archetypes in my practice, or yeah, in my teachings. And each of the different phases has a feminine archetype that is connected to it. So the ovulation phase is actually connected to the mother archetype. And this mother archetype is such a wise, nurturing, all-knowing mother that just like is coming from a place of just really knowing that her heart will never leave her astray, and having an open heart is the greatest service that she can give to the world. And when we learn to live with our cycle, especially around our ovulation phase, we can really tap into that like open heart. Like I call her also like the certified lover girl, who's just like down to give that unconditional love. Like she has this wellspring of love that is never ending. And she also has really healthy boundaries in it. And she says no when she isn't met in her needs, right? Or when something doesn't feel right. Like she says no. And so something I love to teach women when it comes to their cycle too is like really embodying these archetypes for themselves that move through with them during their cycle, because these qualities will arise with like the rise of estrogen during your ovulation makes you feel more open and more loving. And so when you start tapping into that and really finding a healthy connection to these qualities, and like embodying this healthy like mother archetype in particular, it really correlates to like the way that you show up in your life or in your relationships too. um so yeah, I really love bringing that into just a woman's practice, and that embodiment of like being in her power and being grounded in that, you know.
Mm. I'd love for you to talk more about that. How do the different stages and what archetypes do you apply for both all of the stages and
Yeah.
how it impacts our relationships? Because I notice for myself and also clients as well that especially in our luteal phase, which is the phase before the period, right? And the
Yeah.
menstrual phase, like these, let's say 2 weeks I had a client who wanted to break up with her partner every month. She all of a sudden was like, this relationship is not working for me and we need to break up. And she just, all the hormonal changes and the emotional experiences she was having was driving her to the space where she wanted to break up with her partner. And
Yeah.
then when you're talking about the ovulation phase of like being more expansive, being more loving, and it's like we feel really connected to our partner or people that we're dating or just relationships in general. So is
Yeah.
there any insight that you can give us as to how we typically respond? And of course, every woman is different, but how we typically
Yeah.
respond in each stages of our cycle in regards to how we show up in relationships?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so it's so interesting that you say that about your client because I've had a couple of clients like that too, where they're a few days in or they're leading up to their period, right? They're in like their deep luteal. And when you're in your deep luteal, I always say, and this is where I'm like, take this with a grain of salt because it might not fully be your truth, but I always say everything that is not working in your life shows up in week 3 of your period or with your cycle, which is your deep luteal phase, like right the very end of that cycle, right before you start bleeding. And so if you are experiencing where you're feeling like I want to break up with my partner at the very end of your cycle and you have that every single cycle, one, it's either the truth and you keep neglecting it. Like maybe there is truth in that you need to break up with them, or and it's you're so sensitive because what happens when we're coming into our luteal phase in particular, um, our progesterone is rising, and progesterone really is that hormone that like wants us to nest. It wants us to go inward. It wants us to just see what is happening in our internal world. Whereas the first half of our cycle, when we're in our follicular and ovulation phase, our estrogen is more dominant. And estrogen is all about being outward, sharing ourselves with the world, seeing how we really show up in the world too, being more confident, sharing our love in that way, right? Our sensuality, our sexuality also with our partners. In the second half, it's kind of the opposite for us. And there's also more of this like the luteal is really all about coming into this wild woman aspect, these qualities that we as women often are told to shy away from or suppress come up during our luteal phase, such as anger or coming into this like our shadows and really seeing what's happening in our shadow world. And so many women don't know how to respond to that or their inner critics, right? This like brutally judgmental voice that comes up, which actually, if you really listen to the voice, she's telling you everything that's working for you, what isn't. And the trick is to not attach yourself to it, but to listen and then take inventory of what's working, what's not. So the luteal phase is really a really, really, really powerful phase if we learn to approach it in that way. And if we learn to feel our power in that and really also know that we are able to transmute our shadows into power during this time. I will say though, do not make any life decisions in your luteal phase. I always say bleed on it. And then once you bleed on it, you will have clarity and then you can make a decision. However, if the same thing shows up in your luteal phase over and over again, I would see why that's showing up. And maybe it's not so much about I have to break up with my partner, but maybe there's just something deeply not working in your relationship that you really need to change so that you don't come to that point every single time in your cycle again and again. Um, and it also might be some like maybe there's a certain amount of like trauma or something that you haven't worked through that can also show up in your late luteal phase because everything that we have suppressed or put away emotionally shows up in that third week too. And if there's trauma or grief that you haven't worked through yet, that can show up and then that can reflect onto maybe your relationship. So that and that's all stored in your womb area too, especially for women. We store a lot of trauma in our womb, especially if it's a relationship trauma. Maybe it's sexually, maybe it's emotionally, whatever it may be. Like we store that in that area. So it will show up through your cycle too. Um, so that's mainly with the luteal and also with the menstrual phase. Like menstrual phase, we need to nest more. You maybe tell your partner, like, I can't be as intimate during this time. I need more of my alone time because that will make me a better partner. And obviously, for like your ovulation phase, we are more wanting to connect, and our libido is also rising here because really what's happening here is our body is wanting to conceive an actual egg, right? Or the egg that's being released during ovulation. That's just how biologically what we're primed to do. And so sharing that and having like really allowing yourself to be in your sensuality and your self pleasure or your pleasure with your partner, really, really vital for yeah, being able to come into a healthy partnership too and allowing yourself. And I would say have your partner sync with or cycle track with you. Like tell them where you're at in your phase so they know exactly how to best support you and where you're at. And it really helps when your partner knows. It really changes the relationship because they can help you be more in alignment with being the best partner.
Yeah, that's interesting how we are as women in different stages of our cycle. And I definitely
Yeah.
can resonate with everything that you said, where I observe, and it is all about observation, right? All about
Yeah.
observing yourself. When I'm in the first 2 weeks of my cycle, I can work more. I'm more expansive, I'm more social, I'm just more relaxed in myself. Whereas when I'm coming
Yeah.
into my luteal, I really feel it in my body. And I think the more connected I am to my body, the more I can't run away from it. Whereas
Yeah.
before I used to push myself. I used to work in social work. There was no time for rest. I had to be in court. I had to go do this. I had to go. It was a constant high stress job, hence why I eventually left. But it meant that I had to disconnect from the body, unfortunately, because I
Mm,
couldn't slow down. I couldn't now take hours upon hours to listen to what was coming up. And that's the unfortunate thing about the world that we live in sometimes, and goes back to what you were saying. Okay, if that's where you're at, how can you honor that in the best way possible? Maybe you just skip the gym for this time and you do more gentle movements, or you just don't do social events. But yeah, so that is great insight into how we can sync ourselves up with our cycle and be able to live our lives. That, like you always remind us, that we live 28-hour cycles, 28 days, whereas a man is 24 hours, right? So it's just
yeah. Yeah.
understanding ourselves. But I want to steer us in the direction of what you said in the second half of that, which is inviting our partner into this experience with us. And I know in my own journey, like having my partner, we use the Flow app. I don't know if you know Flow, but
Yeah.
he is on the Flow app with me, so he knows where I'm at in my cycle. So he doesn't have to ask me all the time, because I have a little bit of a trauma around being like, are you on your period? Because I
Mm,
feel like in the past people would say that to be like, oh, I'm just going to dismiss you and what you're saying because you're on your period. So
mm,
instead, I've had him come on the app with me, and he knows where I'm at, and he understands that, yeah, certain things are happening at certain stages of my cycle. And he's so attentive, he's so supportive, and he's so present with me. And I think because I wasn't used to that in the past, it was like, oh my God, what is this? I'm having all this love and care and respect and attention. And it's such a beautiful journey, and massive part of me becoming into the secure attachment is having that partner be there present with me and my cycle. So yeah, I really, this can be such a beautiful journey in helping yourself express your needs more as well, when we allow our partners and invite our partners into this experience with us.
mm.
But maybe
Yeah.
there's a lot of us that feel like we are being a bit too much, being a bit too needy. Maybe there's some shame around talking about our period and what's happening in our bodies around this time with our partner, because we don't want to put them off. We don't want them to
Mm.
leave us in any way. So, how can we gently invite our partners to be more attuned to us and our menstrual needs?
Yeah. I think the shame piece is a big thing for a lot of women, right? I mean, we've grown up in a world that's like, when you're on your period, hide that. Or what you were just saying, like being dismissed for being hormonal and having hormones that fluctuate throughout the month, and then being like, oh, you're just like, you're not to be trusted with what you're saying right now because you're about to start bleeding or you're on your period or whatever it may be. And I think that when it comes to having like sharing this with your partner and allowing your partner to really get almost like an insight of what's going on with you, it's I mean, it's just the way that I think we need to step away from thinking, oh, I'm telling my partner when I'm bleeding versus like that's not what we're doing here. We're allowing them to have a window into our emotional world, into our like really you have to understand that our hormones dictate our personalities. Like they dictate everything that we do. It dictates our appetite. It dictates who we choose in a partnership too. It dictates our sex lives, like everything around who we are as women and how we can be our best version in a partnership too is dictated by our hormones. So when you let your partner into that and you let them understand that, I think men want to know. I think that we think that there's shame around it, that they think it's not a great thing, but or that it's like icky or whatever it may be, whatever your belief around it is. But a man that really wants to support a woman, he's going to want to know. And if he's not wanting to know, then he's not your man. That's just the way that I see it. I'm like, if a man can't support me in my cycle, understanding me and the way that I'm moving through that, like then maybe he's just not the right man for me because I need that. I need someone that feels safe in every part of my cycle and I don't have to hide a part of myself because it's not that you're just hiding a part of your cycle, you're hiding a bit of yourself in that too, you know? So I think it's really important to share that with your partner, and letting them know where you're at. And I love that you guys use the Flow app, or you could even have like a big calendar in the kitchen, or if you use like a Google Calendar, and you can like invite them to having a shared calendar on that somehow. There's so many ways you could do that, but yeah, I would say, and then with that too, bringing in when to like have certain activities. So let's say ovulation time is when you guys go on a really fun date night because that's just when you're feeling your best self. Maybe luteal is when you're having a movie night. Like just allowing your partner to be included with your cycle is, I think, really helpful for men because men want to support, they want to provide, they want to be good partners to women that they love. And so let them do that by giving them your all, you know?
Yes, exactly. I always had this conditioned belief that men don't want to know. Men don't want to
Yeah.
touch it. And I remember in school we were having sex ed around periods, and all the boys had to leave the classroom. And I
Mm,
remember even thinking at 11 years of age, why are they having to leave the classroom? They should know about this stuff. What happens with a girl? But for us at that tender age of 11, having our periods, it set that belief and that thought that this is something you have to hide from men. This is
yeah.
something you don't talk about with boys.
Yeah.
This is women stuff. But you're right. I do feel like all the partners, at least the secure ones that I've been with, really do want to support me in the best way. And with my current partner, it's so connecting because I actually will say the opposite of what you've said about ovulation, whereas my ovulation stage is actually horrific because I have ovulation
Mm,
pain,
yeah.
which is worse than the PMS and period pain that I experience. It's like a stabbing in my side. I've had it
Mm,
checked if anyone else is having ovulation pain as well. Like it's normal. At least when I
mm,
had it checked, it was normal. But I know this about myself that when I'm ovulating, I cannot function. Literally, I cannot. I've had to leave social events. I've had to cancel meetings. It's quite horrific. But having him be my support, there was an example where we were out and we were hosting a friend of his. So sometimes it doesn't come exactly on the day that my app says it does. It comes when it wants to come, right? But we were out and I could feel those twinges and I was like, uh-oh, it's starting to happen. But I don't know why I then went into a space of, okay, don't say anything. Maybe it won't come. I just want to be, attentive and pleasing. I went into pleasing behaviors of wanting to please my
mm,
partner and also his friend. But the pain became so strong because I wasn't listening to it, I wasn't attending
mhm,
to it, that I collapsed on the floor. And
mm,
he dropped everything. He's like, oh my God, what is happening? And I said, my ovulation. He's like, right, we got to get home. He said to his friend, we got to go. He was so there with me. And for me, that moment, I felt so safe and so cared for and nurtured that I knew that this was the right man that I want to be
Hmm.
with. And I think it was
Yeah.
just so connecting. So I think if we just allow our partners to see us in these spaces as well, even though I know it's so vulnerable and we've been taught to not do that, can really bring us so close and so intimate with each other as well.
Yeah. Totally.
Mm.
Yeah. I do want to speak on the ovulation pain because that is really interesting that you experienced that. Um, yeah, I don't know. Do you want to dive into that? Because that I had this like I insight just now when you're talking about that. I think it's really interesting that a lot of women have ovulation pain. And it is that time of the month where we're like supposed to feel our best, right? I talk about this a lot about ovulation depression that can also happen when we actually feel depressed during ovulation. There's a grieving process that happens. But um, I also want to state like ovulation pain is like really common, but it's not necessarily normal. Like your body shouldn't be in pain. And I think really what's happening there, if you're looking from an emotionally and spiritual level, and obviously there's a hormonal shift that's it probably has to do with like not having enough estrogen or even excess estrogen. But when it comes to spiritually and emotionally, what's happening, especially for women that are single, you might have some sort of suppression on your conception energy, your sexuality in ways that can happen if you're experiencing any sort of imbalance within your ovulation. Because really, ovulation is all about coming into your creativity, your sexuality, your body wants to conceive during this time. So if you're not really, if there's some sort of trauma around that, that can often manifest as that in ways. And then the other thing is you might have ovulation pain or even depression during that phase of your cycle. If you are single and you're like craving a partner or you're like wanting to really like share that energy with someone, you're not able to, like that can often come through for women too. Um, and yeah, I just think it's really, really important to note that not everyone's going to feel their best during ovulation, like you were saying earlier, and that's your own, like that's another thing that your cycle is reflecting back to you, right? Like what's happening in ovulation, that your ovulation needs that attention from you. Like how can we give it that attention and yeah, reflect on these things through that message that your cycle is essentially sharing with you.
That's so interesting. Thank you for that insight personally.
Yeah.
Because again,
Yeah.
these are just all messages from our body to get curious and just observe
Yeah.
what's happening and seek out information, seek out the
Yeah.
experts that can give us
Yeah.
more of an insight into what's happening in our bodies and in our minds, because they're all intertwined, and in our spirits as well on a
Hmm.
spiritual level. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all so connected for sure. It's really beautiful once you start like tuning in more and you're like, oh, there's that connection, that correlation, you know?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, I have a couple of audience questions I want to ask,
Okay.
and then we
Yeah.
will kind of wrap this up and summarize it with some general questions at the end. But I've had an audience question, and she says, "Is it normal to feel extra needy or insecure or anxious in a relationship right before our period?"
Yeah, this goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? Where we're in our luteal phase and everything that, like, if you are someone that naturally has maybe more an anxious attachment style, or your neediness comes from a place of like needing to be seen or validated, or there's some sort of trauma behind it, who knows, childhood thing, that can then show up when we're in our most sensitive state in our cycle, which is right before we start bleeding. And really, again, what's happening here, we're just so much more emotional because we're so much more open and sensitive. And when I say open, like we're open just in with our internal world is opening up more. And so um, yeah, we can really tap into what's happening internally with our emotions. And if those emotions come up in your partnership, then I'd say why, like look into, like see why they're showing up for you that way. Instead of acting on them, try your best to just like observe them. And then once you're like when you're in it, really doing your best to see, okay, why is this coming through? How, like, where is this maybe stemming from? I wouldn't say it's a normal thing to experience. And also, it's totally valid that you are experiencing it, because I think that for a lot of women, all these emotions that feel uncomfortable, or the insecurities, or the neediness, the attachments, it comes up in that late luteal phase. So praise the luteal phase for showing you that and being a mirror to you in that, you know. Um, yeah, and then from there, do what you can to really work through those triggers or those emotions that don't feel super great.
Love that perspective shift. Instead of shaming yourself for being extra sensitive or extra emotional or extra needy, whatever it is, see it as a blessing that all these things are coming up to the surface. Yes, they feel so freaking uncomfortable and you might not know where to start, but just start with that self connection of like
Yeah,
really observing what is
yeah,
happening instead of reacting to it.
yeah, exactly.
Going
That's the
into
biggest thing.
internal
Yeah.
world. Yeah. Okay. And I just wanted to circle just back around very briefly about the men, inviting men into this journey with us. I just wanted to highlight because it's there, it's niggling, and I feel like it needs to be said for someone who needs to hear this. But sometimes we are with men of different cultures, of
Hmm.
different walks of life, and maybe in their culture or upbringing, menstruation is a taboo. Menstruation was never talked about. Maybe they had a mother who never answered their questions. Like, we don't know what has happened. So, if you are dating someone or in relationship with a man who is physically cringing and maybe dismissing and not wanting to be a part of this journey with you, I would encourage you to not jump straight into like, oh my God, this isn't the man for me. It might be so, it might be that the case. But I just want to invite everyone to get curious, first and foremost.
Hmm.
Okay, am
Yeah.
I with a man who is from a different culture? Because I've dated men from different cultures and observed with them how they react when I talk about my period and my cycle, especially in countries like Thailand and Nepal. I used to live in Nepal and they have this ancient practice called Chowpatty, where there is menstrual taboo. Women are having to stay in cow sheds for their
Mm-hmm.
bleed because it is shameful. And they have the spiritual belief that the devil is coming out of them. So these women cannot touch anything, they cannot look at anything, they cannot be in the same space as anyone because while they're bleeding, all this, it's like dirty. And it's so
Hmm.
sad to hear this. And there's so much happening in Nepal right now to change these perceptions. And I'm not saying it's widely practiced, but it's still practiced. So why I want to offer this is just for us to women to get curious what's happening with men when if they are in this space of feeling uncomfortable, and just see if you can work together because it's not all on you, it's not all your responsibility, but working together to create a safe environment where he can ask you questions or you can express certain things that is happening to you. And it's all about
Yeah,
creating that safe environment, right?
totally, for sure. Yeah, and if you are, if they're, I think that men are also, we're all healing from menstrual shame. Men are too, you know, like it's not just women. And I think that the more we can slowly open them up to it, and slowly bringing awareness around why this is really necessary for women to be empowered in, this, then they see that too. But yeah, you might take some time to warm them up to it for sure. And you're right, like don't immediately write someone up for not, like, it's like saying, if someone says I really don't like that type of food and they've never eaten that food before, you write them off for that. You know, it's hard to just close that door when they don't understand it fully and they don't understand why it's important to honor that. So yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's so many different cultures and beliefs around all these different things, and there is this big shift happening right now. I think we're really just coming back into balance, the masculine and the feminine and overall, and this is part of it. So it's really beautiful to witness.
I feel that as well. And gosh, that could be a whole other podcast episode, masculine and feminine. But for now, you're all about cyclical living. Did I say that right?
Cyclical, yes.
Cyclical living. You're all about it. You're obsessed with it. This is your mission, like you said. But if someone is brand new to cyclical living, what would your recommendations be for those women who want to start cyclical living, but they may not know how to start? Where's the best
Yeah.
place to start?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say, I mean, there's so many different resources out there, obviously, to start learning about this. I would say start your own practice of cycle tracking. And this doesn't have to be anything super complicated, but something as simple where every single day you're tuning into your body, seeing what is available to you. And what I mean by that is just seeing how your energy shifts, how your libido shifts, your appetite shifts, any cycle signs that you're feeling in your body. Track that every single day in just a regular journal. I have created a journal for this very purpose, which you can find in my bio if that's something you're interested in. And that journal also has a whole overview of the hormonal cycle as well as the four phases and like how to best support yourself in each of them. But the simple practice of cycle tracking, and again, you don't have to track your biomarkers like your cervical mucus or your basal body temperature. Like just start with tuning in with your body every single day and writing down what cycle day you're at, right? So day one is the first day of your bleed. And then from there, you're just going to track it until the next day or the next cycle or the first day of your bleed. Um, and yeah, just start with tracking that and see how you can start tuning in your energy shifts and really start honoring those four phases of your cycle and what your body needs from you in those four phases.
I love that. And we will link the journal in the show notes as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we will do that. And my last question for you, my love, Rebecca, is what is one thing you wish more women understood?
Oh, that's a really good question because there's so many things. I think the main thing is, and this just goes back to everything that we talked about on this podcast, is that tuning in with your cycle isn't just about the hormonal landscape of things. Yes, it is. So I'd say the main thing for women is that it's not just about tracking your cycle and having it be this like strict thing where we're just tracking our hormones, but it really becomes this practice that we're able to tune in with that cyclical rhythm that lives within us. And that in itself brings us into just more alignment with ourselves. And I just wish more women would understand that we don't have to just cycle track in order for us to use that as contraception or conception methods. Like do it because you want to learn yourself better. And you have 400 cycles in a lifetime. That's 400 opportunities to know yourself better and become the expert of yourself over and over again. So yeah, really just start that practice for yourself. Doesn't matter what season of life you're in. It is what will really create that safety and container for you to feel like you can effortlessly flow in and really find your rhythm in that, really dancing with your own rhythm too.
Such a portal to self-love.
Yeah, it really is.
And where can listeners get in touch with you, my love, and learn more about you?
Yeah, you can learn more about me or get in touch with me via Instagram. We have my Instagram account, which is Blume Womb. I also have a website, which is blumewomb.com. Um, those are two of my platforms. And then, yeah, on those website and Instagram, you'll find any other offerings or I have a lot of ebooks, a lot of resources on all of this stuff if you want to dive deeper into all of it.
Wonderful. And there's going to be links in the show notes for anybody who does want to check out Rebecca's stuff and Blume Womb. And I really just want everybody to give her a follow on Instagram because her content really is life-changing. I'm forever sending your posts to all my friends and being like,
Oh.
oh my God, this is just hitting me in my heart. You write so well, and I feel like you
Mm.
really understand and you're so for women, and I really feel that energy in your content. So if you are wanting to just be held in the most beautiful way as a woman, and join a community where you want to soften into your feminine and learn all about your cycle and what it means to be a woman in this world, go and check out Blume Womb because it's such a phenomenal account. Rebecca, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for joining me today here on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me on the Relationship Rehab podcast. I hope that this episode has supported you in healing, growing, and evolving out of insecure attachment and unhealthy relationship patterns and into safe, authentic love with yourself and others. If you enjoyed the episode, it would mean the absolute world to me if you would just take a second to rate and review this podcast. Every rating and review from you guys counts, as it really helps this podcast to grow so it can reach more people who need to hear this content. And don't forget to connect with me on social media. Take a screenshot of this podcast episode, share it on your IG stories, and tag me at the.relationship.rehab with your biggest takeaway from the episode. I really do love reading them. See you back here next week for another episode on the Relationship Rehab podcast.